Hi, everyone. Welcome to our February QualiWare Users Group meeting, and thank you very much for joining us. Our agenda for today's meeting is to go through our introductions, which we've just completed, to have Kevin provide us with some CloseReach news. We have a featured presentation today from Steve Hayward at CBSA talking about business and enterprise architecture. We have Dragos from our support team who's going to give us some QualiWare tooltips. And we also have our regular standing item on our agenda for our GC community discussion. So Kevin, I'm going to hand things over to you. And if you would like to get us started with our CloseReach news, please.
Welcome everybody, and glad you could join us on this nice sunny end of February day. In terms of QualiWare update, actually I had a call from, and this actually ties to something else about CloseReach. I had a call from Kuno Broderson the other day to talk about the situation in Ukraine, because as some of you may know, part of QualiWare's development team actually is in Ukraine. And he was calling to assure me that they were in constant communication with them and had been updating their plans appropriately. There has been some slight impacts on a couple of things, but QualiWare as an organization, has been distributing their development efforts. At one point, a lot of it was centered in Ukraine, but now it's distributed there, as well as Denmark, as well as Brazil. The QualiWare development team is more spread out. Their developers are safe, which is great, and but he wanted to reach out so that I could communicate that as far as the company and new software releases were concerned, there was a slight impact, but not major. So 10.5.1, and this is the slight impact, has been delayed slightly. So they're looking at end of March as the release for that. At that point, we'll be trying to schedule QualiWare to come on at our end of month meeting at the end of March to provide a demo of the new features, and it is a feature release. I guess because of the talk of Ukraine there, I wanted to let people know that it has some direct impact in our organization as well, because we have people in the company who have relatives there, as well as in neighboring countries. So Cecile is going to post a couple of things in the chat, some links to the Red Cross Ukraine efforts, donation efforts, as well as a couple of links provided by Curl. One is directly to the Ukraine Armed Forces, and the other is for humanitarian efforts. And CloseReach will be making a donation to the humanitarian efforts there directly to the Ukraine. And so Cecile will post those links if anyone else is interested in the chat window. But it does have an impact on us as well in terms of family members and things on the CloseReach family. So our thoughts are with those people. In terms of the GCEA solution contract, Bruno Ouellette is reaching out to all of the current Government of Canada user community to talk to them about options for a follow-up contract. Our current contract, which is an extension of the initial 5 years, runs till 2023. And everybody should have received their quotes for their annual maintenance and support. If you haven't, please talk to Cecile, but I believe everyone has that. and please make a point of getting back to Bruno on, in terms of extending or initiating a new contract. Anything that we can do to simplify procurement, obviously, is, would be helpful, and having a longer term standing offer supply arrangements specifically for QualiWare. Our current one provides for software, for training, and for services. So ideally, anything new would also encompass that to make it simpler to procure the things that your particular department may need. In terms of the current contract, as I said, all the quotes for annual maintenance support, as of the end of May, should have gone out already. And we have one department looking at a new collaboration site license, which is great. We have another department that has is jumping into the web-based client with 250 plus licenses. And we just got the contract today for shared services, renewing their GC100 package. So that's a license that was originally acquired through Treasury Board that shared services assumed. And that's 100 architect, 200 plus, and 2,000 collaboration licenses that shared services has. So we do have those other volume packages as well. If you've got any year-end money sitting there that just absolutely needs to be spent. So it sort of covers the contract and customer updates. Our quality and compliance special interest group meeting is being shifted by 1 week in March. So please make sure that if you're interested in attending that, you take a look at the registration link on the CloseReach main page. And, we are moving it by 1 week to avoid the March break for Ontario, for people that might be holidaying now that some of the restrictions are being lifted. The other thing is, I just want to put in a plug for Roger Burleton's course, which will be running March 14th, 15th, 22nd, 23rd, and 28th and 29th, half days in the afternoons, and that's his business architecture course. So it will run. We have sufficient attendance already. So, but if you can think of people that might benefit from understanding better how to gain stakeholder engagement, improve their communications across the organization, and help the different organizational groups understand the value of business architecture, this is the course for it. So if anybody has any questions, they can come off mute and ask. Other than that, Cecile, I'm finished.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Steve, I believe we are now ready for you. So I'm going to perform the complicated maneuver of changing you over to presenter.
Okay, are you able to see my presentation now?
I am. And Steve, when you're ready when you finish there, just, stop so that I can,
Yep.
I'll pause the recording at that point.
Yep, not a problem.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much.
Anyways, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Stephen Hayward. I'm the Enterprise Business Domain Architect, Domain Lead for the Business Architecture practice at the CBSA. I've been at the CBSA for 35 plus years, starting out as a uniform customs officer right back out of college. I've also spent a bit of time in private industry, both in the telecom sector and transportation. What we're going to show you today is sort of the culmination of a lot of work from a lot of people over a number of years, including some people on this call, including Denise Boisvert-Dingley. She was an active member of the architecture program at the CBSA back in its beginning. And what you've what you're going to see, there's quite a bit of content, and some of you may have seen it already before. One of the important things that's happened in the past little while is we actually had, over the last year, previous fiscal year, we got the program branch client owners of the content to actually review and approve everything you're going to see today. So this is actually signed off approved content, which is under governance and change control using the governance engine within QualiWare. I just got a short deck, just to give you an idea of the architecture program before we go into the demo. The CBSA Enterprise Architecture Practice, we have the typical 5 domains. And one of the things that's very important is we are strongly business-led, and this is very much pushed by our director, and it aligns with Treasury Board architecture recommendations. So it's very much a business-led architecture practice. And as you'll see, we've developed quite a bit of content already within the business architecture space, and we've got a lot of work going on to actually leverage it and communicate it throughout the agency. Our business architecture team, we have a full-time manager. We have within the, what I'm going to call the reference architecture side, which is the side that I'm responsible for, we have a CS4, a CS3, well actually now we're ITs, not CSs anymore, and a contract resource totally focused on reference architecture type content. We also have in our group a dedicated business process management and modeling team. So we've actually engaged with various areas in the program branch. They're providing client funding, and we're actively in the process of using a BPMN 2.0 as our standard to model all the processes at the CBSA. And when you think about this, and you think about your own agency, we have around 453 processes currently in our catalog. It's quite an ambitious endeavor because we've never done it before. We've never actively managed processes at the enterprise level. It's always been done within the context of a project, and we've never maintained a persistent repository along with the model supporting them. So it's quite an ambitious effort. It's a multi-year effort that's well underway. So far, what we've accomplished to date, so we've obviously got our QualiWare instance that we have our business architecture repository, but there's a couple of other things that we use within the what we call our agency collaboration platform, which is what we've branded it. First is our APM, or Application Portfolio Management Practice. So Treasury Board, every year we have to report on the state of our applications, and we've actually integrated the APM reporting within the repository, and more importantly, we've actually linked it into the business domain as well. So we can do full traceability up and down the stack, which I can demonstrate to you in the demo. We've also maintained the agency business service inventory. Another thing, requirement Treasury Board, is you have to report your business services every year, how you're doing, what are your service standards, how you're doing against those standards. Before we maintained those in Excel spreadsheets. Well, now they're maintained within the ACP, and we're actually going to be working over the coming year to try to work with Treasury Board to develop a method of automating the reporting. Because right now with Treasury Board, we get our information and we have to rekey it into their own system, where APM uses what's called a data loader. We're hoping we can do the same kind of thing with the agency business inventory. From a business architecture perspective, or a business process perspective, like I mentioned earlier, we actually adopted a process categorization framework from APQC, if you're familiar with that organization. It stands for American Productivity and Quality Control, or Quality Center, I can't remember the C. And it's the first time we've actually using an industry standard categorization method to actually maintain our process catalog. We've also got a baseline capability model. It's not fully completed, but there's four small areas that aren't. And I can show you quickly about it today. But what we found with capabilities is that a lot of our clients were struggling with the whole concept of what a capability is and how do you use it. So one of the things that we've done is we actually are starting an education program for all the client branches and all the client users to get them to understand what a capability model is, how you would use them. Because what we found is the people that weren't involved in the actual working groups of the capability model development really don't understand it. So one of the things we're trying to do this year is to educate them so we can actually leverage and use the capability model more to what its intended purpose. We've got a bunch of things coming up. I just mentioned about the capability model. But one of the other ones we just started this week is the second one. We're actually working with our strategic planning and investment logic maps, and actually integrating the work that we do within the investment proposal process. So anytime they're doing a proposal for they need some money, whether it's an IT initiative or other, is they're actually going to leverage the ACP. They're going to develop all their logic maps within the ACP. We can link them to our outcome stack. We can link them to our performance indicators, all of which are in the ACP, which I can show you. And they can actually get those benefits. And for the first time, what we can do is we can actually force a standardization of the investment logic maps where they're actually using proper agency and program outcomes. They're using actual performance measures from our performance measure catalog. They're not inventing things and making things up, which we found quite frequently. Some people will do that, is they'll create something that sounds really good, but it really doesn't make any sense. It's not really one of the ones that's been officially blessed and signed off by the president. One of the other ones we're doing is with our critical service inventory right now is another aspect of the Treasury Board reporting is reporting your critical services. This is very important for SSC because what they want to do is they want to be able to identify what are your business applications that support those critical services. So if we know there's a system failure, which ones do we respond to first? In the past, we had separate inventories. There was the service inventory and their critical service inventory. They did not align. They used their own definition of what a service is. So we've actually started working with our department security officer, the DSO, to make sure that their critical service inventory and the CBSA service inventory are in full alignment. So that's another one that we're finishing off this year. And as I mentioned in the intro, we have a very active BPMN modeling effort of all the CBSA business process catalogs. And it is going to take us numerous years. We have roughly 453 processes currently in the catalog, but it keeps growing because every time we meet with some of these groups, we identify, oh, we never thought about that process, or this one process we have is actually two separate processes. So we're actually finding the catalog is growing as we start these efforts. Just to give you an idea of CBSA by the numbers, like I've been at CBSA for a long time. I have both a program and an IT background. And when you look at some of the numbers, I defy anybody, I don't care how long you've been, to have all of this in your head. You know, as you look at 450+ business processes, we have 197 business services. We're dealing with 327 different organizational units and organizational sectors. We have 976 policy references, 321 regulations, 96 different acts of parliament we're responsible for implementing part of. So when you look at these numbers, they're staggering. And like I said, I don't care how much experience you have, nobody knows this information. Nobody can remember all of this. So the ACP is a method that we can show that where this information is retained in a single persistent repository with links, so you can find a lot of this information and you don't have to maintain that information in your head. That's the end of the deck, Cecile. Any questions at this point?
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. Okay, go ahead, Dragos. Thank you.
Okay, let me just rewind. Yes, so today I have a couple of items to share with you. First off, how to add new dialogues to existing templates in QLM, followed by how to populate a folder with tagged objects in QLM. So first item, to preface my presentation, the tooltips that I'll be walking you through today will be executed in QLM alone. However, the changes that they enable will be accessible from the web once you've done the publishing segment of the work. So the first item I'll be presenting is how to add a custom tab and custom fields into an out-of-the-box template. So any of the templates you see here on this list are applicable. This is very useful if you have a template that's slightly adjacent to your needs and maybe could be made to suit your needs 100% with a couple of additions. It's also useful if you're looking to avoid any case maker work, which some of us might know is the QualiWare customization component, allowing you to make changes to the meta model. For what would be a minor change, it should be also noted that this tool that I'm about to show you is for adding new dialogues, not editing existing ones. That's still case maker territory. So you can add a tab to any template using this approach. And what do I mean by tabs? So if I go into an active, for example, any item in QualiWare, and I go to its properties, these are tabs, or otherwise known as dialogues. So you can add a tab to any template using this approach. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to be using a quality audit template and adding in 3 fields into a new tab. So I have a quality audit here. These are the standard tabs that come with it. And I'm going to be adding 3 fields, an additional date field, a description, which is a multi-line field, and a single link type field. to the object in a new tab. So for background, this is a function that we at CloseReach have used to enable some of our auditing capabilities, as well as creating a management review function in an existing template. So the tool is called Add Dialog, and it's an out-of-the-box function, which is accessible from the Tools menu. So if I reset my buttons and option menus here by clicking on the Repository tab, and then I go to Tools, Customize, Add Dialog, we're met with a little window here that customizes the tab that we're creating. So the functions on this page, new dialog name, what we're going to call our tab, and we call it, let's say, new tab. And subdialog 4, this is where you identify the templates that you want the tab to appear on. In our case, it's quality audit. Then we have dialog size. So this is where you specify the size of the dialog. We're going to be leaving this. We're going to be leaving this alone because for our purposes we have enough space to include the fields that we want. And of course, the dialog fields area where you can add or remove attributes, custom attributes no less. So once the dialog info is entered, which we just did, we can click Add to customize the fields on the dialog, and this opens this window. And the functions here are field name. So this is the attribute name itself. It's not how it's going to appear on the dialog. An example to put things into context would be has responsible is the attribute that's always displayed as responsible in a dialog or on the web. So I'm going to call it new date. And the field type, we're going to pick date. The initial value is a value that would be displayed there by default, and that you could then change. If you leave it blank, then it's gonna be blank. So for example, 2022, February 02, special day. The allowed value, we'll come back to it in another attribute that we will add. And the field coordinates here help place this attribute in your dialog wherever you want it. We're going to leave it untouched for now. And the prompt, this is how the name of the field will be displayed on the object. So let's call it new date. To go back to the previous example, this is the responsible title for the has responsible attribute. All right, now let's add another one. This time we will add a description field. So a new description. Whoops, Butterfingers today. Field type. This one will be a multi-line because this is the rich text editing field in which you can open a full screen view just like a Word document and work with it and include objects and so forth. Initial value will leave blank. Same with allowed value. We're going to come back to this on the last field, and the rest is self-explanatory according to what I've told you. So the prompt, new description. Okay. And then we're going to add one last attribute. This one is going to be a single line attribute. So we'll call it new persons. The field type is going to be single line as discussed. Oops, sorry, single link. The initial value will leave blank, and the allowed value. So here's where you can set up what types of templates can be displayed in this field. So if you have a single link or a multi-link field, you can sort of narrow the amount of templates you want to show. In this case, we want to show persons. So we'll go with the person template. And new person. Okay. And from this point, we can test and see what our new tab would look like. You can see here that there's no sort of overlapping or missing text to like not enough space to include a full name and stuff like that. So we're good for all intents and purposes. I'm going to press save and OK. And I'm going to exit out of our quality audit object and just, whoops, go back into it and see here we have our new tab. with our new date and new description and a new person. So I'm just gonna fill myself in there. All right, so if you wish to edit any of those fields after they're created, this can be done from QualiWare setup object. So the QualiWare setup object is generated by the add dialog tool when you make any change, and this is what defines and tells the software that, hey, there's a new tab in here, and what goes in that tab. So you can see here that we have 2 meta add dialogues. If I would want to change anything about this, I could go in here and play with the code directly. So let's say I want the new date attribute to, or sorry, I want the space, or maybe I want, okay, let's see. Yeah, maybe I want new date to be a little bit taller for whatever reason. So I would go in and change the dy from 25 to 45. Apply, run, and then once I close out of this and go back into it, then we can see that it's actually taller than before, but since none of the other attributes have been modified, this is sort of overlapping. But just to illustrate my example. So that was my first tip of the day. And and these, side note, these dialogues, you can use them on the web as you like, just like you can with any out-of-the-box dialogues and attributes, provided you, as I mentioned, that you do the publishing work, that you go into the HTML dialogues and you add those new fields in, you add those new tabs in. And yeah, so the second tip I have for you guys today is about adding tagged objects to folders in QLM. So this is very useful if you want to maybe simply view which objects have that tag and you want to view them in a convenient location. You could use a folder, or maybe you have a large number of tagged items and you need to do something to your repository, or you need to move this content over to another repository. So you want to export them. A convenient way to do so, and this is a good kind of tooltip within itself, is to put those objects in a folder and export them and import them into another repository. That way, once you import, you have the visibility, that level of visibility on which items came in and potentially overrode some of the existing items that you have. All right, so as some of you may know, inside repository folders in QLM, you do have that option to populate a folder with items of a certain tag. So if I go into a folders and I go to the properties of a folder and I go to the advanced tab, there's an option here, include objects with these tags. So I've already added hashtag QUG here, but as we can see, there's actually nothing that's showing up inside the folder. So at first glance, this looks kind of bugged out, and some of you have actually filed bug reports as a result of this. But actually, this feature only works. So you specify in the folder what tags you want it to be populated with, and then you hop on over to the web. And if I open the repository explorer here, whoops, it's reloading. So if I open the repository explorer on the web here and go to the tagged objects, you can see a couple of objects here that I've included the QUG tag into. But that's not, that sort of demonstrates what this feature does, but that's not what this tooltip is about. There's more. So what about QLM? What about being able to export an entire folder? Well, I've come up with a way around that with the help of Bob Boisvert and Sam Boisvert, actually. And it has to do with, so what I'm about to show you will allow you to add objects of a certain tag to a folder through a QCL command. So I'm going to go to command language. So tools, command language, and then go into command multi-line here. And I've already pasted in my code from beforehand. So, and in fact, I can paste this code into the chat if any of you would like to take notes. There we go. So the first command is, we get the repository folder. And we get that through the object ID. So we define it as repository folder as a local variable, and we get an object ID for it. And so I'm gonna, whoops. Okay, so I'm gonna go into the properties here, go to audits, find the object ID, and then open my command again, paste that object ID in there. And the second part is, what hashtag do you want it to look up? So I want to look up QUG. Oops. And this part of the command will also tell you exactly what is being moved to the folder that you've specified using the object ID. And then the last part is the act of moving those folders. So once I press OK, this tagged objects folder should now become populated with the same content that was on the web. So there you go. So now you're able to view those tagged objects in the folder of your choice. Keep in mind, you do need to use the script again when you have additional objects, but that's just the nature of entering commands. Yes, you do have to run that periodically. Yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you, Dragos. Any questions for Dragos on those items?
Oh, I have like 100 questions for him, but I'll go. That was awesome. Thank you very much. It's Carol. I work for ESDC, and I'm a little concerned in regards to creating the new dialogues. First of all, if I create a new dialogue, is it visible to everyone? It is?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So at ESDC, we have somebody that does the configuration or customization in QualiWare, and I find it's a little bit problematic that any user can go in and create a dialogue that will affect everybody without any controls,
Right.
So that was my first concern.
Right.
And yeah, and
Okay.
also, so basically, if I do this, everybody will see it. That's
right.
The bottom line. Okay.
Well, fortunately,
again, most organizations will put controls over who can handle or touch the customize, or who sees the customize option off the tools menu. And but in some repositories, which are strictly a sandbox, so that people can develop content, that they want to practice or experiment with in advance, they may be given a repository where those restrictions of the tools and customization are not present.
But this is something that, I've always questioned about this tool is to, when you go to tools, you can go to command line, you can go to QualiWare setup, and it opens up the door to a lot of things that could be dangerous, because not everybody has the knowledge on how to do these customization. But I would hope that in the future that the tool itself would close down some of these functionalities so that like you said, Kevin, so that only people that have the expertise could do these kinds of customizations. I find it's quite open, this tool.
So again, that's dependent on each customer, right? Every customer has their own approach to using the tool. So QualiWare will provide it in a fully open state, but restriction of that, again, how you set up your security levels and various roles, is dependent by organization. Every organization has it set up differently. Adam,
no, but out
online.
of the box.
Well, again, out of the box, it is a wide open tool set because we can't predict
Yeah,
how
okay.
people are going to use the tool. Adam, maybe you want to take yourself off mute and explain how D&D has restricted that access.
Okay. Thank you.
Unfortunately, D&D hasn't. We've had many conversations about restricting it, but it would be almost impossible to prevent users from running basically any QCL script at the moment. There are certain fields in QualiWare where you can just put QCL code, and just by double clicking on the object, it will run reports and stuff.
There's a lot of background noise going.
Yeah.
And of course, moving forward, QCL will go away, right? With the tool itself. Am I correct?
Well, I'll let Kevin answer that one, but like,
Well, actually, yes. The things are, QualiWare's plans are for QCL at some point to go away, and things will be controlled more sharp methods.
Okay.
At the present time, as long as QLM exists, QCL will also.
Okay.
Also,
Thank you.
To add to Kevin's comment that you have different levels, you can have different levels of access control. The extent to which you can do damage, quote unquote, with by adding in additional dialogues is somewhat limited, because the same way that you the extent to which those new attributes affect is only limited to the attributes and the tab itself. The information doesn't go outside of that. And if you wanted to undo those changes, it's as simple as going to the QualiWare setup object that was created that I showed you guys earlier for changing the code, and simply deleting the objects. If I press delete, and then I log out and log back in, those tabs in the quality audit are gone. You won't be able to see them gone right now because I'm still logged in with the same instance. But once I leave, those QualiWare setup objects will not be able to reinitialize these attributes that I've defined. And so it's not that big of a concern as far as
So
I
then
understand.
it goes to the question of, do you do it this way or do you use CaseMaker, right? I guess CaseMaker, I'm not very familiar with CaseMaker, but if you want to create dialogues, is there for you a way to say, well, I can do it this way or I have to use CaseMaker? What makes that differentiator for you?
It's hiding the option, I guess, would be one of the things that makes it that differentiator. You can hide the quality audit, or sorry, the QualiWare setup template from non-admin users, and definitely you can hide the customize, section like Kevin said.
I know, Phil,
right.
that you've got your hand up as well. Did you want to jump in on and make a comment on any of that?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, I said I noticed you had your hand up and you took yourself off mute. Did you want to jump in and comment on any of that?
Well, my first comment was on the folders itself. I mean,
okay.
you show the script on how to make it, but there's a fix that you can make it work permanently, right? So you can put code in your method model, and then it's going to run every time, and then it's going to be fixed. And it is fixed in 10.5, so it shouldn't be much of an issue, and the code is actually simpler to put in the fix is simpler than the code you showed up a minute ago. And as for the difference between CaseMaker and this way of adding tab, I mean, this is a quick and dirty way to add a simple tab. But when you start adding tab on multiple templates and wanting to modify them around and move the fields so that they might be side by side or group them or whatever, CaseMaker is much easier. Plus,
Okay.
I think
CaseMaker is also the tool that you want to be using if you're going to affect all repositories potentially,
yeah,
as
and
opposed to a specific repository. And from a performance point of view, the more setups that you have in a repository, the slower it loads.
yes,
So
and
will-
and also what you might end up having is sometimes some QualiWare setup might run sooner than some other code, so the dialog order might be affected. So your new dialog might not even show because there's other piece of code that run after your QualiWare setup. That's something I saw a few times. And then when you were saying everybody sees it, is everybody that is in your configuration. So if you do work in a private workspace, it's only people in that private workspace that will see it. Plus,
Okay.
since it's a QualiWare setup, you can also restrict it so that it's only you that sees it.
The best way to use this in actual workflow is it's good for prototyping. It's good for a quick patch, so that if somebody says, I need this field right now, you can use this to patch it into production, or if somebody wants a what if, you can do it. Because CaseMaker releases, you want them more scheduled, it takes higher testing and so on and so forth. You can implement something now, and then in the next subsequent CaseMaker release, you make it more permanent in CaseMaker, and then you take the QualiWare setup away.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'd suggest it's really relevant to each organization. QualiWare's experience in Europe, they have very few customers who actually use CaseMaker directly. So a lot of the work done in, through this method, but they do restrict access to, setup or, to the options here. Again, it depends. There's many ways to do. If like QualiWare, there's always more than one way to do any particular action within QualiWare. It's figuring out which is the best method to be used. And again, as Barry said, for quick prototyping or to get an idea of will this work in the long run, this is one method. But we do have a number of customers who are, and QualiWare does, who use this method for making changes to their meta models.
Thank you.
Carol, you have your hand raised. Did you want to comment or question?
Yeah, just a quick comment on CaseMaker. Carol, finally, the cost difference. The cost difference between the CaseMaker and the architect license, especially small customization is big. So that is one of the factors.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Well, that turned out to be, and Carol, that turned out to be a good discussion. That was good.
I love the tips and tricks. If you guys can keep that up during these meetings, that would be awesome.
That's what we plan to do. So, and Dragos
and
loves
Carol, we also offer coaching sessions as well.
We also offer coaching.
Some additional help.
For a price, I would say, right?
Always.
I'll keep that in mind.
Anyway, we do plan on having this as a regular part of our user group meetings. So, and because Dragos also loves being on the hot seat, don't you, Dragos?
Very much, yes.
Very much. Okay, I think we have come to the end of our meeting for this month. It is gone 5:30, so we'll wrap up and let everybody go. Next month's meeting in March will be our 2-year anniversary of remote meetings. If you can believe it, 2 years has gone by, and we have a special surprise planned for you. Now my boss is going to ask me what I meant by that as soon as we get off the phone. And I'm just going to leave you with, it's going to be a special surprise for our March meeting. So if there's any other questions, comments about what you saw today, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to say thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and we look forward to seeing you in March.